Well, I tell you, some of this college football news is starting to seem less like college football news, less like sports, and more like those old school daytime soap operas like Days of Our Lives or whatever. But Jim Harbaugh and Lincoln Riley are all in the news this week for all the wrong reasons, really, which is a shame, in particular on Michigan's part. I mean, they're one of, if not the best teams in the country. I know everybody hates Michigan, especially the Ohio State people and whatever, they're cheating. We'll get into all that. But Michigan's one of the best teams in the country right now. It should be a really big story heading into the final sort of 5, 6 weeks of the regular season here. And instead, it's, all these cheating allegations and stealing signs and buying tickets to future opponent games. And we're going to talk about that. And then Lincoln Riley, I mean, this guy, uh, I don't know. He's missed practice 2 days in a row. The head coach now missing practice 2 days in a row for an undisclosed illness. Now, obviously, if Lincoln Riley is sick in any type of way, I hope he's going to be okay. I hope he's fine. I hope he fully recovers. I hope he's able to, come back today and it's, some kind of cold, whatever. I hope everything's fine. I don't want to make light of a possible illness or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing. But it is a weird coincidence that he catches an illness that is so bad that he's got to miss practice in the middle of the season 2 days in a row, right after Southern Cal loses 2 games in a row, basically eliminating themselves from the playoffs and anything like that. It's just it's if he is sick, it's really bad timing for him because the reality is it just doesn't look good, right? It just doesn't look good. And again, if he's sick, look, we've all taken sick days. Everybody has not gone to work at some point in their life because they were sick. So I'm not putting him down for that. And again, if he's sick, I hope whatever it is, I hope he recovers and gets back to work here soon. But we can't ignore the fact, and this is just an unfortunate reality, that we have all, as college football fans, really as sports fans in general, just become accustomed to not really taking anything we hear or see at face value when it comes to what coaches say. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm not, whether it's, we talk about this at the end of every year, these coaches that are looking at other jobs and then reporters will go, like Lane Kiffin last year at Ole Miss. Every week, hey, you're taking the Auburn job. What do you expect a coach to say in that situation, right? You can't believe anything he tells you, but what do we really expect to say? So, unfortunately, you just can't believe, we're so skeptical about anything a coach says, and it is odd. Look, I know coaches get sick. They're human beings like the rest of us are, whether it's a cold, a flu, whatever, throw their back out, anything. Lots of things can happen to these coaches, just like what happened to any of us. I just don't know that I've ever heard of a head coach having to miss 2 days of practice in the middle of the season for an undisclosed illness. Just don't know that I've heard that. Again, doesn't mean that that's not actually what's happening, but it just it's a bad coincidence for Lincoln Riley to be missing time right now. When the heat has kind of been turned up on him after losing back-to-back games on the road at Notre Dame and then home to Utah. The Utah loss is worse than the Notre Dame loss. I don't care about rivalries or anything like that. I just mean the perception of it, right? Utah's playing backup players all over the place. They've now beat Southern Cal something like 5 times in a row. They beat Lincoln Riley all 3 times they've played Lincoln Riley. It's just a bad look for Southern Cal, and for him to be missing right now. You got the questions about the defense and Alex Grinch. Caleb Williams has had one really, really bad game, the Notre Dame game, and even the Utah game. I didn't think he played his best, and he had some poor body language at the end of the game. There's just, and then you look at the way Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley has always kind of been considered a probable future NFL coach, and you add all this stuff up together, all happening at the same time, back-to-back losses. Caleb not playing well, Lincoln Riley missing 2 days straight of practice in the middle of the week during the season, beat for the 3rd straight time by Utah, never-ending questions about the defense and Alex Grinch. And you can't help but wonder, is he looking at an NFL job? You just can't help but wonder. I'm not saying he is. Not saying he's not. Again, I'm not I'm not going to come on here and say I don't believe he's sick. If he is sick, I hope he gets better. I'm just telling you, this isn't specific to Lincoln Riley. This is any coach. I'm just skeptical about anything a coach does or says. I've just been conditioned that way over 40 years of being a college football fan. You can't really take anything these coaches tell you at face value. And because of the way Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma, a lot of the pieces just look like they fit together. Doesn't mean they do, but it does look that way. So you're seeing Lincoln Riley's name tied to is it the Raiders? You're seeing the Chargers. I mean, you're seeing Lincoln Riley's name basically attached to any NFL team that is or might be looking for a head coach. And there's pictures on Twitter of Lincoln Riley in the Chicago International Airport with one of the Bears owners. That's fake. Well, the picture might be real, but it's not from yesterday. The idea on Twitter is that, oh, look, Lincoln Riley's out sick, but here he is in the Chicago International Airport with one of the co-owners of the Bears. There's no way. He's not that dumb. There's just no way. So stop believing everything you see on Twitter when it comes to that. But there's a lot of smoke, to say the least, around Lincoln Riley and the Southern Cal program right now. Even if Lincoln Riley is completely in at Southern Cal and will be there next year, year after that, just a lot of questions there. He needs to rethink philosophy top down with the defense. What's he going to do with Alex Grinch? Caleb Williams probably going off to the NFL. Without a Caleb Williams type player at QB, Southern Cal is like a 7-8 win team. Now, Lincoln Riley has always managed to find a high-level QB going back to the first years at Oklahoma, so I don't doubt that he would again. But it's just a weird time for Lincoln Riley to be missing 2 days in a row of practice. So anyway, just something to keep an eye on there. On to the Jim Harbaugh thing. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be the coach at Michigan next year. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. I'm less sure the reason why. Whether he's 100% or Michigan is 100% guilty of everything they're being accused of now, or whether they're 0% guilty of everything they're being accused of now. Doesn't Jim Harbaugh got to be tired of dealing with this constantly? With the accusations in the NCAA and the suspensions and the investigations. And we know the NFL wants Jim Harbaugh. We know the NFL has shown interest in Jim Harbaugh. We know Jim Harbaugh has interest in the NFL. He's coached there before, 2 or 3 off seasons in a row. He's interviewed with various teams. It just seems to me at this point, the relationship or the attitude that Jim Harbaugh would have going forward towards college football in general and the NCAA in particular, it's like a relationship that has reached the point of no return. The relationship between Jim Harbaugh and college football, to me, appears to be too broken to be fixed. And so whatever ends up happening with this latest round of allegations against Michigan, I feel like at the end of the season or sooner, Jim Harbaugh is going to just hang his hat up and say, I love Michigan. I'm a Michigan man. I played here. Now I've coached here. I've given it everything I've got. I'm headed back to the NFL. I truly believe that this will be Jim Harbaugh's last year as head coach at Michigan. Now, the harder part. Why? What is going to happen with all this stuff that's going on? First of all, he's talking about the NCAA doing anything. I don't trust the NCAA. None of us do as far as we can throw them. If the NCAA comes out and tells me Jim Harbaugh's completely innocent, I won't believe it. Not just because the NCAA tells me. If the NCAA comes out and says Jim Harbaugh's 100% guilty, I'm not going to believe that either just because the NCAA tells me. I don't trust the NCAA. Nobody does. They're terrible at their job. And on top of that, it takes them years and years and years to do anything. Who really cares what the NCAA figures out or decides to do 3 years down the road about the accusations that are taking place right now? These type of accusations are something that need to be addressed one way or the other immediately, as soon as possible, today, tomorrow, next week. We just unfortunately don't have time, considering the stakes and what's being accused, to wait the 1, 2, 3, 4 years for the NCAA to do their usual song and dance. It's just too late at that point. I wonder if, well, I'll tell you this. If I'm a Michigan man, which I'm obviously not, but if I was a Michigan man, I would be more worried about potentially what the Big Ten could step in and do immediately or in the near future, the next couple of weeks. I would be more concerned about the Big Ten stepping in to do something in the short term. I would be way more concerned about that than whatever the NCAA will or won't do a year or 2 year or 3 years down the road. I wouldn't be concerned about that at all when it comes to the NCAA. Harbaugh will be gone by that point anyway, in my opinion. None of the players on Michigan will still be there. Like, there's no one will care at that point. And that's kind of how the NCAA has floated along all these years. They hand down these kind of punishments or half punishments or punishments that don't make any sense because you're punishing, in a lot of cases, a coaching staff, a school, a program, or a team that doesn't have anything to do with what they're being punished for because it occurred 3, 4, 5 years in the past under a different coaching staff with a different set of players, and in a lot of cases, a different athletic director, sometimes different school president. It just makes no sense at all. It'd be like a father committing a crime and the son being forced to pay the fine. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't really care what the NCAA ends up doing when it comes to the Michigan thing. But as far as how any of this might or could affect Michigan this season, if I was a Michigan fan, I would be more concerned about the Big Ten as a conference stepping in and deciding to make some sort of ruling or some sort of decision as it relates to Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, the football program, all that. Just kind of as a, for instance, as it's a worst case scenario type of thing, I could see a scenario, again, worst case scenario, where the Big Ten, if they feel like enough evidence has been presented, could step in and go, we're going to declare Michigan ineligible for the Big Ten title game. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to shut the program down. You know, Michigan's scheduled to play whatever team 3 weeks from now. They're still going to play that team 3 weeks from now. Still going to play Ohio State at the end of the season. But no matter what their record is, they're not playing in the Big Ten title game. That's about the worst case scenario I can see unfolding for Michigan this season. And you might say, well, if they're 12-0, let's say they beat Ohio State, they're 12-0. What happens to a 12-0 Michigan if they don't go to the Big Ten title game? Who does go to the Big Ten title game? Well, it'll be the second place team, most likely Ohio State. What would the playoff committee do with that? How would the playoff committee handle that? I don't know. I honestly don't know. If the Big Ten presents some kind of case against Michigan and says, look, this is the information we have, this is the evidence we have, these are the rules we have in place, and this is what Michigan did to circumvent those rules. Because of those things and the effect or possible effect it could have had on actual games played, we are going to deem Michigan ineligible for this year's Big Ten title game. If they do that, what does the playoff committee do as far as ranking Michigan? What do they do with that piece of information? I honestly don't know. The Big Ten can't force the playoff committee not to include Michigan in the playoffs, nor can the NCAA, for that matter. The college football playoffs are not governed by the NCAA. So I don't know. And you might say, well, the Big Ten would never do that. Why would they, piss down the leg of one of their best teams or whatever, Michigan? Why would they do that? Well, they've got a second. Let's say the season plays out this way. Let's say Michigan goes undefeated, 12-0, beats Ohio State, and Ohio State's sitting there at 11-1, but they're not going to the Big Ten title game. The Big Ten can go, you know what? We can keep Michigan out of the Big Ten title game, which may keep Michigan out of the playoffs, which costs the Big Ten money because you get paid for making the playoffs. But the Big Ten can go, but you know what? If we keep Michigan out, the second place team is Ohio State at 11-1. The playoff committee will probably put Ohio State in. So either way, the Big Ten ends up getting a team in. So the Big Ten may consider that. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit against the wall. But that's what I would be more concerned about as a Michigan fan than anything the NCAA might do 2-3 years down the road. Because it feels like the Big Ten is capable, if they want to, of doing something now or tomorrow or next week or whatever that directly impacts this current season, which, like I said at the beginning of the video, is one of the best seasons Michigan, it looks like anyway, going to be one of the best seasons Michigan has had in a long, long time. To me, they look like the best team in the country, okay? To me, they look like, and look, I can already know there's a bunch of comments probably already, this guy just hates Michigan. I don't really care, but I've had Michigan number one in my ranking for a month. Okay, and I'm a Georgia fan. I got Georgia way down there at 6 or so. I mean, so you could tell me I'm only saying all this because I hate Michigan. I'm telling you, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the Big Ten's going to do. I don't know what the NCAA is going to do. I don't know what the evidence is going to show once it all comes out. I've got no idea, no clue. I'm saying worst case scenario. If I'm a Michigan fan, my worst nightmare is that the Big Ten, not the NCAA, the Big Ten as a conference steps in and decides to do something. And I think the most drastic thing they could do would be to say Michigan's ineligible for the Big Ten title game, regardless of what the record is. That's the worst case scenario. And if they do that, what ramifications does that have for Michigan in terms of the college football playoff? That would be my biggest concern. That would be my biggest concern if I was a Michigan fan. But Lincoln Riley and Jim Harbaugh, man, they just seem to always be in the news. So let me ask you this as we close up the video here, and you can let me know this in the comments down below. If I were to tell you that next season, one of these two coaches is still going to be coaching at their current school, and one of these two coaches is going to be in the NFL, what would your pick be? Which one is more likely to bolt to the NFL after this season? Again, just a hypothetical. If I could time travel and I went into the future to right now, a year from now, next October, and then I came back in time and I said, all right, one of those two coaches, either Lincoln Riley or Jim Harbaugh, is still at their school. You know, Lincoln Riley is either still at Southern Cal or Harbaugh still at Michigan, but the other one is in the NFL. Which do you think is most likely? Lincoln Riley to the NFL and Harbaugh stays at Michigan next year, or Harbaugh to the NFL and Lincoln Riley stays at Southern Cal next year? Let me know what you think about all this soap opera, Days of Our Lives. What's the old thing? Like sands through the hourglass. These are the days of our lives.